All right, let's look at DSMA 9 linear equations. We're not going to do a whole lot with linear equations in statistics, but it's good to know how to move numbers around and variables around inside equations. All right, so this is kind of silly, but it's just showing you about combining like terms. So if we have all of these hamburgers and French fries and drinks, we would combine like items, right? So we would take the hamburgers. We've got 2 hamburgers here, 3 hamburgers here. So that would give us 5 burgers here. So 5B. For the French fries, we have 1 here, 2 here. So that gives us a total of 3 French fries. And then finally, we have drinks. We have 1 here, 2 here. So that gives us 3 drinks, right? So variables are really just titles for an unknown. In this case, it's a word, right? It's burgers, French fries, drinks, but we're not going to combine them any further. So if we have variables, let's say we had an X and a Y, we are not going to combine those. This is just a resource sheet for you to come back to later. I'm going to go ahead and work through the steps, but if you want to come back and look at that later, you're welcome to do so. Okay, so when we're working with equations, it's going to use that word solve the equation. And when we see that, we're going to have x equal to or y equal to when we finish. It also talks about combining like terms. So we'll talk about that in just a minute. Let's go ahead and rewrite this problem. Now, when you're working with equations, the best thing to do is to make sure that you clean up each side. So on the left-hand side, we have an x and we have a -6. Well, there's nothing, we can't combine those because we can't combine an x with a number. But on the right-hand side, we have 2 numbers. So let's go ahead and clean those up. -5 plus 9 would give me +4. Okay, so now we've cleaned up each side as much as we can. Now what we want to do is we want to have the variable on one side. I like on the left side, but it doesn't matter which side. So the variable on one side and all of the numbers on the other side. So I want to make sure that I have x all by itself, but I don't want this -6. Well, the way to get rid of the -6 is to do the opposite. So I'm going to actually add 6, right? Because if I take a -6 plus a +6, I get 0. But with equations, if I add 6 on the left-hand side, I have to also add 6 on the right-hand side. Okay, it's very important to keep that balanced. So over here, I get 0 when I add -6 plus +6, and so I only have an x left. On this side, 4 plus 6 gives me 10. So that is actually my answer, but let's go ahead and check our work. I'm not going to check our work on all of these, but let's go ahead and do it on this one. So I'm going to check my work over here. What I'm going to do is still take my equation. I'm going to substitute the 10 in for x and see if I get the same answer on both sides. Well, 10 minus 6 gives me 4. -5 plus 9 also gives me 4, so I'm good to go. My answer is +10. So x equals +10. All right, so again, the problem says solve the equation. Have a different variable, I have z, but that's okay. I'm just going to end up with z equals something, which is what they have right here as the solution. They're not always going to ask you about combining like terms. That's nice of them to do that on this problem, but if you see solve the equation, that's what we're going to have to do. So we're going to look on both sides. On the left-hand side, we just have a 2z, not much we can do, but on this side, we have 2 numbers, so we can actually go ahead and subtract those. So we have 2z on this side, we have 17 minus 27, or a -10 on this side. Now you do have to make sure that you're careful with your signs. You're welcome to use your calculator to back you up, but don't put the equal sign or the variables into your calculator. You have to just take those piece by piece. So if you put 17 minus 27 in your calculator, you get negative 10. Okay, so we are as cleaned up as we can be right now because that 2 is actually multiplied times z. So if you see a number and a variable right next to each other, that's actually multiplication. Even though we don't write that it's multiplication, it's really 2 times z. So there's not anything else we can do at the moment with that. We've combined like terms on both sides, but now we know we want to get back to z equals. So we're going to do the same thing as far as doing opposite. On the last problem, we added 6. It was a minus 6, and we added 6. On this one, we have times 2. So we are actually going to divide by 2. Let me write this problem again so that you have each step. Okay. If we divide by 2, 2 over 2 is 1. And so we would just be left with 1z. Now, we don't write the 1 in front. It's not wrong. We don't do it. But I have to be careful here. Because I divided the left-hand side by 2, I have to also divide the right-hand side by 2. And so that gives me z equals negative 5. That's my answer. I, of course, could check my work, which is a very smart thing to do. But let's keep moving now. You guys check your work. All right, let's come over here in the lower left-hand corner and talk about combining like terms when we have variables. So let's say we have 2x plus 3x. Okay, so that would be like having 2 cookies and then I'm given 3 more cookies, right? I'm able to add the number in front, which is called our numerical coefficient. So I can add the 2 and the 3 together. That gives me 5, but then I bring the x as well. I don't do anything else with the x. I don't multiply. I don't add any exponents. I just leave it as x because it is just like I said, it's 2 cookies and they hand me 3 more cookies. Now I have 5 cookies. All right, let's say I have 8 cookies and I give 5 cookies away. Okay. So again, I'm going to just take those numbers in front, the numerical coefficients. 8 minus 5 gives me 3, and I bring along the x. So I had 8 cookies, I gave 5 away, and now I only have 3 cookies. Okay, so that's what we're going to do up here in this problem. So this problem has some cleaning up that we have to do on the left-hand side. I have 2 like terms. I have a 9x minus 8x. So what I'm going to do is subtract those, and that's going to just leave me with 1x. Now, it's not wrong to write the 1x. We don't usually do that, but it's okay. All right, so now we can't do anything else on the left-hand side because we have an x and a number. There's nothing to clean up on the right-hand side. So now we're going to go ahead and move that 8 because we want x by itself. So because this is a plus 8, I'm going to subtract 8, but that means I have to subtract 8 on this side as well, right? It has to be balanced. Whatever I do on the left-hand side, I also have to do on the right-hand side. So this is now going to give me 0, which is awesome. And I'm going to have x equal to 2. And that's it. Yay, that's my solution. It would be very smart to put that back in and check your work. But you would see that the answer is 2. All right, so let's add some decimals in there. It's still the same thing, just looks a little scary. I could add fractions, still the same thing. And we can use our calculator to back us up. So this one's pretty cleaned up. There's nothing to combine on the left-hand side because I have a variable and a number. The right-hand side only has a number. So I'm going to go ahead and move that 1.7 to the other side. Now remember, you have to do the opposite. This dot is not wanting to work. So I'm going to subtract 1.7 from both sides. You're welcome to put this in your calculator. Put 8.5 minus 1.7. If you're going to do it by hand, just make sure the decimals are lined up. And then you're going to go ahead and just subtract like there wasn't a decimal there and put the decimal back in. I can't seem to get this decimal to work. So it looks like 6.8. Excuse me. All right. So our answer is 6.8. You could easily put that back in and check your work. Let's keep moving. All right, so this one looks a little scary, right? If we hadn't done the other ones, if I'd done this one first, you probably would have panicked, but just has decimals in it. Like I said, you can use your calculator. All right, so let's see if we can clean anything up. Doesn't look like it. On the left-hand side, we have a variable with a coefficient in front of it, and then we have a number. So we can't combine those two. On the right-hand side, we just have a number. So let's go ahead and move that 2.1 because we want to get the variable by itself. Right, I'm going to subtract 2.1 because in the problem it's plus 2.1 and I want that to be 0. I only want the variable on this side. Okay, now the only thing I can do, I need x to be by itself, but remember this is multiplication, right? This is negative 3.5 times x. So I want to do the opposite, which means I'm going to divide. But make sure you grab the negative along with that when you divide, because we want positive x, we don't want negative x. All right, I think we get 8. And that's it. That's our solution. Okay, one more in this part. So normally in class, I would stop now and let the students try this one. I'm going to go ahead and work without talking and let you guys work. Okay, so with this one, you are going to move the 3.4 over to the other side, subtract it from both sides, watch your signs, use your calculator. Then we're going to divide by 0.8 because remember that 0.8 times x. So divide both sides by 0.8. Again, watch your signs. You should get negative 4.